Bismillah, Assalamu alaikum. Hello everyone, Ghazal here. I am the admin and translator behind the Persian Poetics Instagram account. If you may have noticed, recently I've been advertising a video series where I give an in-depth explanation and translation of Hafez's Divan, one poem at a time. I've been posting these videos for Patreon subscribers and I've been encouraging you guys to check that out. I decided to put this first video from the series out as a sample so that you can inshallah see what the video series would be like. And if you're interested, subscribe and see the rest of the videos. So without further ado, here's the first video in the series. Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you, marhaba, welcome. This is Shahrzadeh, the editor, translator, and admin of the Persian Poetics Instagram account. As you know, I've been translating Hafez Shirazi's Divan in full. I've been going Ghazal by Ghazal to the best of my abilities. I'd like to thank you guys, the Patreon supporters of this project and this account as a whole, by creating this video series where I'll be going through every ghazal of the Divan and providing an in-depth explanation of the meanings and elaborating a bit into the original Persian text in a way that you won't really see if you simply read the translation, because I've done my best as far as I can to translate the text faithfully, but there's certain contextual things, certain linguistic things that you can only really pick up by reading the original Persian. So in this video series, I'm going to be going ghazal by ghazal, reading the original Persian, reading my translation, and then explaining some of the small points or details that are not present in the translation, simply because you're not able to translate them. The metaphor may not exist in English, or it may just be a contextual item, something like that. So without further ado, I'm going to pick up see if I can get that better, my Divan of Hafez for you guys, and just flip to the first ghazal and begin reading it. So this first ghazal that you'll find in the beginning of every Hafez Divan, it begins with Illa ya as-saqi. So as I said, if you open any Hafez Divan, you'll find it in the very beginning. Even though technically, according to the way Divans are organized, which is by the alphabetical order of the final rhyme, this should be the third ghazal in the book. But because it's so popular, they kind of pushed it to the front and made it the first. So what does this mean? A divan of poetry isn't written like a normal Western book, for example. You don't open the book and read the first poem and then the second poem and then the third poem in chronological order as you would a Western collection of poetry. This is really not present in the Islamic tradition. It's also the case in the Quran, for example. A lot of people incorrectly assume that the Quran, like the, for example, New Testament, would be in some sort of chronological order. That's a common mistake that people in the West have when approaching texts. Divans are the same. What usually happens is a poet, towards the end of his life, either feels sufficiently accomplished as a poet and compiles his own divan, which Hafez supposedly did, although we don't know for sure because nothing survives of that. Or they pass away either unexpectedly or they don't bother to compile their own divan, and then their students, followers, friends, whoever, maybe a patron, will compile all of their poetry and put it together. So what way would you put it together? The most sensible way was to just go by the very last rhyme. So that way all you need is one line of the poetry of any poem memorized, and then you can actually go through and find it in the book and then find the whole poem. Otherwise, the ways you could organize it, I'm not sure, maybe by chronological order, though it's pretty difficult. Again, modern poetry tends to be organized that way, but we're dealing with a text that's very old. So that's the way this is organized. But as I said, this first poem really should be about the third poem, but they've made it the first one just for the sake of its popularity. إلا يا أيها الساقي ادر كاسا وناولها که عشق آسان نمود اول ولی افتاد مشکلها به بوی نافه‌ای که آخر صبا زان طره بگشاید ز تاب جعد مشکینش چه خون افتاد در دلها مرا در منزل جانان چه امن عیش چون هر دم جرس فریاد می دارد که بربندید محملها به می سجاده رنگین کن گرت پیر موغان گوید که سالک بی خبر نبود ز راه و رسم منزلها شب تاریک و بیم موج و گردابی چنین حایل کجا دانند حال ما سبکباران ساحلها همه کارم ز خودکامی به بدنامی کشید آخر نهان کی ماند آن رازی که از او سازن محفلها حضوری گر همی خواهی از او غایب مشو حافظ متى ما تلغى من تهوى دع الدنيا وأهملها. So that was the poem in Persian. One thing that's notable about this specific ghazal is that the first and last lines are in Arabic. It's not so common with Hafez. With some writers, for example, Maulana Rumi and Saadi, you'll find quite a bit of Arabic in their writing. With others, like Khayyam, you won't really find anything. Hafez has a few lines of Arabic here and there. It's not very common. But for some reason, this ghazal begins and ends in Arabic. I don't know if that means anything or if that just happened to be that way, if I'm reading too much into it. It's interesting because the very first line in Arabic, there's a bit of controversy surrounding that. Some people attribute it to Yazid bin Muawiyah. This is a very controversial figure because he presided over the death of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So of course many Muslims aren't so happy with him. But this isn't for sure copied from him. Some people say that it is. The book that I consult did quite a bit of research into it, and he said that it's kind of inconclusive. Where did this come? Okay. So the line that it's copied from is أنا المسموم ما عندي بالطريق ولا راقي أدر كاس وناولها إلا يا أيها الساقي, which means I'm the sick, or the masmoom is kind of like feeling sick. Sick is marid. Masmoom is kind of a different type of sickness, maybe hungover in a sense. And I don't have any cure. Pass the cup and bring it around, O you the saqi. So this is the line of poetry that it's copied from. It's Jahiliya, Arab poetry, or Khamriya as it's called. We're not quite sure who wrote it, but this is to say that it is copied from someone, although that is not like plagiarism in the modern day. That was an accepted practice in Islamic poetry, to take a line of poetry that's already been written and put it in your poem, and then use that as the basis for your poem. It's kind of how rappers sometimes rap lines from other rappers. Obviously everyone knows who the original line is from, or maybe if they sample a beat, it's kind of like a nod almost to someone in your tradition, so to speak. So that's not to say that he copied. It's just there's a debate around where the line is from, and I think it's very interesting. It's one of the rumuz, or the secrets, or unknown things about this ghazal, of which there are many, which I'll get into. So now I'm going to read the English translation of this ghazal, my translation that I prepared for the forthcoming book. O Sagi, bring the cup around to my lips, for love seemed simple at first, but then came the hardships. He unlocks his locks with the sweet musky smell of the morning air. So many twisted hearts are bleeding from the twisting of that tangled hair. How can I enjoy time in my lover's home when every moment I hear the bells call out to pack my bags and leave from here? Color your prayer rug with wine if the Magi peer orders, for the wayfarer is not foreign to the tradition of spiritual wanderers. We're in a dark night with violent waves in a whirlpool causing fright. How can the lightweights on the beach relate to our plight? All I did in search of pleasure ruined my name. How can my secrets remain when in every gathering they proclaim? Hafez, if you're seeking his presence, don't be absent yourself. When you find infatuation, forget and leave the world itself. So now I'm going to go back into the Persian text and read some lines, and then kind of add some thoughts and point out some things that you wouldn't quite get just by reading the translation. So in the beginning he begins, Illa ya ayha as-saqi, which means, so in ya ayha is a way of invoking someone in Arabic. It's like saying yo or oh in English, hey, you, something like that. Illa means only, that means none other than. Ya ayha as-saqi, the saqi, edar kasan wa nawilha, turn a cup and bring it around. So who is this Sagi character? We see him a lot in Persian poetry. If you look at my page, you'll see tons of references to this person. It's kind of ambiguous, and that's part of the point. Sagi literally comes from saga'a in Arabic, which means someone who brings water or gives you water. In the context of wine poetry, it's someone who brings you wine. So I guess you could vaguely translate it into English as barkeep, although that doesn't really convey any of the meanings other than one very literal meaning. In another sense, Sagi can have a more spiritual, less literal meaning. For example, Imam Ali alayhi salam is called Saqi Kawthar because he's said to have a river in heaven called Kawthar that I believe is a river of milk. I can't quite remember. There's different rivers in heaven according to Islamic theology of wine, milk, honey, things like that. So we call Imam Ali alayhi salam Saqi Kawthar, the wine bearer or the tavern keeper or barkeeper of the Kauthar River in heaven. Another thought could be maybe someone's peer, their Sufi peer, could be a saqi. Another word for a Sufi madhab or tariqah or path or order is mashrab, which literally means the place of drinking. It's from sharaba. So if your Sufi path is the mashrab, where you drink, or literally where you drink wine from, then the saqi, the person who pours you your wine, could be your peer. It's another way to look at the word. Another way it's rendered sometimes is as lover. So if your wine is love, you're drunk on the wine of love, then your lover is pouring you your wine, they're your saqi. There's many meanings behind this word. It's kind of ambiguous. Part of the beauty is that you can read into it whatever you'd like. So if you're more Sufi inclined or more pious, you could read Ella ya ayyuha saqi and think, oh, he's talking about his peer. Or if you're in love with someone, you could think, oh, they're talking about their lover, and so on and so forth. All right, moving later down in the poem. In the fourth bait, we have Bime sajjade rangin kon garat pir muqan guyad که سالک بی خبر نبود ز راه و رسم منزلها. In English, color your prayer rug with wine if the Magi peer orders, for the wayfarer is not foreign to the traditions of spiritual wanderers. This bait is the subject of a lot of study. I think that you could write probably a couple sentences about every single word trying to figure out what it means. بِمَي سَجَّادَ رَنگین کن. Literally, with wine, color a prayer rug. It's important to understand Islamic theology, specifically the thought of purity. So in Islam, we have this idea of tahara, or in Persian taharat, which means to be ritually pure. It's related to cleanliness, but it's not quite the same as cleanliness. So something we think of as clean could actually be not tahir, or something we think of as not clean could actually be tahir. It's kind of more of a spiritual cleanliness. There's certain things that are unclean. For example, blood, urine, alcohol. These things are called najis, which means impure. And a person can also be najis. For example, if they bleed or if they use the bathroom. And in order to rectify this, you're supposed to go through a process of washing yourself with water. Or for other actions, you could do a different process. One is called wudu, which is the smaller or the lower ablution, I think it's called sometimes. When you essentially wash your hands, feet, face, ears, nose, mouth, you kind of go through a washing process. You can find it explained on the internet all over the place. The thought here is that wine makes you impure, and a sajjada, a prayer rug, must be pure to pray. So the idea of pouring wine, an impure substance, onto the pure prayer rug kind of is a ramz or a secret for disregarding the asceticism of religion, the outward Sharia elements, so to speak, and looking not at the zahir, the out, but the batin, the inside. I said asceticism. This corresponds to the Arabic word zahid. That's ascetic. My apologies. Asceticism corresponds to zuhud. And Hafez does not like this. In some Sufi contexts, asceticism or zuhud or a zahid is referred to as a good person. But specifically in the Hafezian context, which we're focusing in on, it represents kind of the bad elements of religiosity. Almost the way the Quran talks about in Surah Ma'un, which it talks about people who make a point of making a show about their religion, or they kind of take it too far, almost to the point where it misses the point of being religious in and of itself. So to Hafez, he's really always writing against those types of people and writing about looking at the deeper meanings of religion. So he says, "Bimei sajjad rangin kon," essentially forget the outer Sharia of religion, so to speak. Garat pir muqan guyad. So if to you, says the Magi peer. Muq means Zoroastrian, and Muqan is the plural. It's where we get the word Magi in English. Who is this character? It's a very big question in the Hafez world. We're not quite sure. It could mean really a lot of things. Some people think that it refers to a complete peer in Sufism. Some people think that it's literally a Zoroastrian person. So Hafez has a spiritual advisor that's a non-Muslim. Other people think it's a mix of a few things, or maybe it's a ramz or some sort of analogy to this mystical understanding of religion or Islam or something. We're not quite sure what it is. Some people think that calling him Zoroastrian is kind of a heterodox way to refer to him, to maybe distinguish him from Zuhud or the normal non-spiritually inclined Muslims who are just obsessed with the outer core or the external visible aspects of the religion and know nothing of the internal spiritual aspect. We're not quite sure. But this, for Sufis, from our point of view, is thought you have a peer, you have a sheikh of your tariqah, of your Sufi path that you follow. And it's saying essentially, if he tells you to do something, you follow it because he's showing you the path. This is part of Sufism, is this obedience to the follower of your path. It's kind of, we take it to mubaligha level, as we say in Arabic and Persian, or an extreme level in the poetry, but it's present in real life. So the thought is, if your peer tells you to do something in the path, you should do it, even if it's something as drastic as pouring wine on your prayer rug. I don't think Hafez ever would have done that in real life. It's kind of an analogy, and we'll run into more of these in the future, these kind of extreme analogies that are used to make a point. Then he continues, که سالک بی خبر نبود ز راه و رسم منزلها. So this means, for the traveler is not without news of the path and traditions of the homes, literally. So let's break that down. Salik is one word for travel in Arabic. We have musafir, which literally means traveling in the sense of maybe going from Detroit to New York City for fun. Then we have za'ir, which means visitor. And then we have salik. So salik comes from silk, salaka, which means to go down a path. Sometimes Sufism is called silku suluk, which means kind of traveling, so to speak. We think of it as a path. So salik is another word for Sufi, but invoking the sense of being on a path. So it's saying, for the wayfarer, we can say spiritual wayfarer, Sufi traveler, something like that, is familiar with the path of the homes. So what does this mean? The word manzil means home, literally in Arabic, like the word bait in Arabic, or khana in Persian and Urdu. But in this case, we think that it means maqam, that it's similar to maqam, but it might have been picked for the sake of the rhyme. So if you look at Ghazal, every line ends with lam ha alif, mushkilha, dilha, mahmilha, manzilha, sahilha, mahfilha, ahmilha. This is part of the rules of Ghazal. So I'll go over a couple of them. Generally, ghazals tend to be 5 to 15 baits, and a bait is 2 misras of poetry. This is a single bait. It's 2 lines. And in the end, generally speaking, in either the last bait or the second to last, the poet will actually refer to themselves. So this is sometimes confusing for people new to the genre. Maybe it seems a little conceited or full of oneself. It's kind of a way of signing off the poem, so to speak, almost as a modern poet would say dash, maybe dash Hafez. But in this sense, you refer to yourself, and it can be a way to almost take a shot at yourself or teach yourself something, so to speak. Hafez tends to use them in very interesting ways. It's part of what makes him a great poet. Some poets don't really use them. For example, Maulana Rumi, I don't think I've ever come across him referring to himself. By the way, it's called takhallus, the thought. So I've never heard, or you seen him or read him refer to himself as Maulana or Rumi. That's actually a good way to find a fabricated Rumi Ghazal, is if he calls himself Rumi or something like that in the poem. It's usually not the case. Sometimes he uses Shams Tabriz or Shams, because his poetry was written in praise of his peer, Shams Tabriz. But Hafez, generally speaking, for almost every ghazal, I've not come across many where he doesn't, refers to himself in the poem. He does takhallus. So anyway, going back to the word manzil, to digress a bit and get back on track. Manzil is thought to be adjacent to maqam. In English, maqam is translated as station. So this is kind of a larger thought in the Sufi tradition, that when you begin this path, there are many stations along the way. So maybe the first station is just becoming aware that Sufism exists. And the final station is called fana fi Allah, which means literally annihilation into God. So you have this first stage where you don't even know what Sufism is. And the last stage is when you become so encapsulated by Sufism that you actually become annihilated, that you lose yourself and you become one with God, and you make that, we say parwaza malakati, which means literally like the heavenly flight, so to speak. You ascend and become one with God. So what he's saying essentially is that there are these maqams in Sufism, or at least my understanding. I mean, we can't be sure what he's saying, but that there are these there's these steps within Sufism, and that if your guide who has passed these steps is telling you do something, that you should do it, because even if it seems odd to you, he's treaded that path. Some Sufis believe that along this way, the understandings or the adherence to the Sharia changes, or to the outward representation or practice of Islam. So some people see this as referring to that, saying, okay, once you become enough of a Sufi, you become a qalandar or something like that, you can kind of shed some of the zahiri or the external elements of Islam. And this might be a reference to that, So that might explain why Hafez was so big into drinking and things like that. Maybe he thought that because he was at a different level that he wasn't bound to that other side of Islam known as Sharia that most Muslims would abide by and would be offended at the thought of not following. So this is a bigger topic. Inshallah, we can unpackage it. It's also been written about by other Sufi writers. We're going to look into that in the future. But that might just be a reference to that thought. I'm not sure. Again, people interpret this differently. This is just my interpretation. Also informed and helped by this sharh, this is just one jild. It's one copy. It's about this thick, the whole thing. But it's by Dr. Saeed Hamidian. It's called Shahr al-Shawq, which literally means the explanation of passion. Moving on, Hafez says, Shab tariq و بیم موج و گردابی چنین حایل کجا دانند حال ما سبک باران ساحل ها, which literally means the dark night and the fear of waves and a whirlpool so frightening. This is where, but it literally means how do they know, or how could they? How could they know our state? Literally hal, our state. Kind of like they say in Arabic, kef halak, how are you? Or hal shoma chator in Persian. How can they know our state? The light weights of the beaches. So in Persian poetry, the dark night is commonly used as a metaphor for frightening things, fears, being scared maybe of death, of something like that. And I think that also exists in the English language. And the metaphor of the ocean as being a scary place might not be as relevant for us. Maybe flying would be a more relatable modern metaphor. But essentially, if you think about it, back in the Middle Ages, one of the scariest things you could do is get on a boat headed for the ocean, because there's no communication, there's no motors, there's no good packageable food. A lot of people would die at sea. You'd go off for 8 months and you wouldn't hear from anyone. Maybe not 8 months, but many months, so to speak. I mean, if you could think maybe from Persia to Africa or to India, you could be gone for a year and no one would hear about you. And if there was, a whirlpool or a storm at night, you could just die, and that would be that. There'd be no rescue team. So as far as a medieval person is concerned, a metaphor of being, in a water storm, a sea storm at night, that would be one of the most frightening things that you can think about. So he's making an analogy to, I think, the pain or the burden or the weight or the sadness that he's carried in life, because he contrasts it with saying, how could they know the light weights? He means people who have a light weight on them, the light weights on the beach. How could they know of our state? So he's essentially saying, how could someone who hasn't been through what I've been through know what I carry on me? So here he says, همه کارم ز خودکامی به بدنامی کشید آخر. خودکامی here means essentially seeking lower nafs pleasures, I believe. We use kam in modern Persian to mean kind of give you satisfaction. So when someone smokes a hookah and it gives a good cloud, they say kam mide, kam khub mide. So another person can say, I dislike my life, I'm depressed. They could say kam talch, a bad taste or a bad. I'm not quite sure actually the literal meaning of kam, how to translate this word. But essentially he's saying all the things that I did to search for the pleasure of my lower self got me a bad name in the end. Nahan ke manad an razi ke az ou sazan mahfil ha. So a mahfil, I think it's used in Urdu as well, in Persian, comes from Arabic. It comes from hafala, which is the root word for party. So hafla is party in classical Arabic, and mahfal is where a party happens. But I think in the context of Persian and South Asian Sufism, mahfil can be a place where people sit down and tell a story, so to speak. So Hafez is saying, how can I keep this secret to myself when people make a mahfil of it, when they sit in a circle to tell it? And I think this might be saying, or drawing an allusion between himself and some of the famous tales that we tell. We have Layli and Majnun and Farhad and Shirin and things like that. It would be common for people to sit in a circle, especially in his day when there wasn't our modern forms of entertainment, sit in a circle and for people to tell these ancient love stories. So maybe Hafez is saying, all the lovey stuff that I did, the nafs stuff that I did in life, how can I cover the secrets when now people are sitting in a circle and telling the story for entertainment to each other? And at the very end, he says, Huzur gar hami khahi az ou qayib masho Hafez. It literally means, if you want a presence such as this, don't become absent from him or her or it, Hafez. Huzur in Arabic comes from hadara, which means to make present. So In Arabic, for example, if someone says, I would like this at a restaurant, the guy would say hadir. That means it'll be present for you. Hudur, again, means present. You can use it in an honorific sense. You can say hadrat. So hadrat to say the sheikh, hadrat Imam Ali, hadratek, that means your presence. It's a respectful way of referring to someone. Sufi mahfils, dhikrs, are sometimes called hadra because they believe there's a spiritual presence there. So hudur in this case can mean many things. It can mean a spiritual presence, the presence of a lover, the presence of a feeling, who knows. He's saying if you want a presence, don't become absent as which means from him, her, it. So the word in Persian encompasses these three things. And that's part of the beauty of the Ghazal genre. Can mean God, it can mean him or her. So in this sense, Hafez could be saying, if you want to meet God, don't be absent from God in your life. If you want to meet a person, don't be absent from the person. If you want a feeling, don't be absent from it. We can't really know. Spiritually inclined people will read it as God or divine presence, or maybe the presence of a peer or a sheikh. Maybe secularly inclined people or people looking for a love metaphor, a human love, would be inclined to read it as the presence of a lover. And then the last misra of the last bait reads, Meta ma talaqa min tahwa da dunya wa ahmilha, which is Arabic. It literally means when you encounter tahwa. So tahwa is one of the words of love in Arabic. We have about, I think, a dozen words for love in Arabic. There's qaram, ishq, hub. We say mahabbat in Persian and Urdu as well. It comes from that. Hawa, shawq, ishtiyaq, things like that. We have so many words to refer to different stages of love. I don't have them all memorized, unfortunately. Tahwa can be approximately translated as infatuation. It means like a short love. So if ishq is a deep burning love and hub is a kind of a stable love, tahwa is a fleeting love. Da, give up. Da, dunya wa hamilha. Give up the world and forget it. So it says, when you encounter infatuation, give up the world and forget it. So I think maybe this is referring to, again, a dunyawi, a worldly kind of infatuation, maybe a worldly ishq majazi, kind of a fake love as opposed to divine love. That might be a more Sufi spiritual reading of this ghazal. I'm not quite sure. Maybe it's referring to a worldly love, but a person who's not a good lover, who's just here for a short time and a good time and not a long time, so to speak. So again, we can interpret this many ways. You can interpret it as you wish. I prefer a mix of the spiritual and dunyawi interpretation, but you're free to think of it as you will. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I think we're running nearly half an hour. If you're a Patreon supporter watching this, I'd really like to take a moment to thank you for supporting this project. Without your help and support, financial and emotional support, this project would not be possible. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this as well. Please stay tuned for the next videos. And for now, alaikum assalam, peace be upon you. Have a good day. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch that video. If you enjoyed it and you'd like to see the rest, please check out the Patreon link in the description of this video, where you can subscribe and get access to that video. And not only that video, but many other videos and other extras like the WhatsApp group chat, where you can speak to me one-on-one and ask questions individually, where I'm more available than the Instagram DMs. And you'll also be supporting this page generally and helping ensure that it continues and that I'm able to translate these poems consistently and accurately, and also work on other projects, inshallah, like these videos and also books that will be released in the future. If you enjoy this channel, I'd like to please ask you to consider supporting it. It really helps ensure that I'm able to continue working on this and that you can enjoy more of the poetry in the future. Thanks again for taking the time to watch this video, and until next time, have a good day. Assalamu alaikum.